The Phoenix Suns play some Jazz and they turn one first-round pick into 3. Does this mean a deal for Jimmy Butler is imminent? Plus, Locked On Lakers tells us what could make LA's front office go all in at the deadline, and Matt Moore reveals the saddest team he's ever witnessed in person. That's all today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets, and your shot clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior NBA writer for the Action Network. We've got Matt Moore, and from the Locked On Bulls podcast, we've got Hayes. Matt and Hayes, it felt like a lot happened yesterday, but we only had one official move, and that is that the Utah Jazz sent the Phoenix Suns 3 first-round pick swaps in exchange for Phoenix's 2031 unprotected first-round pick. We're going to get into the implications of this on a potential Jimmy Butler to Suns deal in just a moment, but first I just want to ask you, Matt, are you surprised that the Suns got 3 first-round picks in exchange for their own 2031 unprotected pick?
No, I think it's indicative of a couple of things. The first, that the Utah gave up aren't very valuable, given who they're from and what the protections are, et cetera. So like, it's not like a super hugely valuable set of firsts. The other thing I think is that if somebody says, yeah, no, well, definitely, yeah, you can have 3 first rounders if you just give us your 2031 first. Sure thing. My reaction would be, how bad do you think we're going to be in 2031? And the answer from everyone is very, very bad. So the Suns better do all this short-term maneuvering, Hayes, because there is no future. On the other hand, who knows if any of us will be here in 2031? So maybe that's the upside for the Suns here is, make hay while the sun still shines.
No, there's definitely some kid right now in middle school that Danny Ainge is definitely scouting right now. Like that's all that means. He has his eyes set on a guy that's not even old enough to shave yet. So,
and he won't trade him. That's the thing. He'll think about trading that kid later on. In 20 years, he'll have taken offers, but won't ultimately trade him.
Yeah, no, but I think it's a smart move by Phoenix to stack the deck for assets, because it makes it kind of inflates whatever trade they're hoping that this is about to set up. So,
all right, let's hear from the Locked On Suns podcast to see if they felt that this initial move, was smart or not.
Bottom line is the Suns now have 3 picks instead of 1.
Yeah, there is something just to be said that it's not a second-round pick. I'll be honest with you. I was very skeptical, and I am so okay with being wrong. I thought the Suns were done making deals. I just didn't think they had the assets, didn't expect them to do something like this. But Danny Ainge, you dirty dog, you love these picks that are further down the road. Where I'm talking about the Brooklyn Nets years ago, or now with the Suns, where he's willing to cash that lottery ticket. Where are you at now? I want to know, what is your percentage that Jimmy Butler is going to be here? Or are we just trading Bradley Beal to Brooklyn and we're getting Cam Johnson and we're getting the band back together?
I'm like at 90%. I mean, 95. I mean, it feels like an inevitability at this point, right?
Lots of reporting flying around about what other teams would be involved in a potential Butler to Suns deal. Milwaukee's name came up a lot, taking on Bradley Beal to get under the second apron and sending away Chris Middleton. One hang-up, though, in all of this is still Bradley Beal's no-trade clause. We got some reporting from Fred Katz of The Athletic yesterday that Phoenix still has not discussed a trade with Beal, who is a noted card holder. Are you surprised that they didn't start those discussions sooner, Hayes? And what are the chances that Beal decides, hey, I'm going to blow all this up, I want to stay in Phoenix, forget your picks?
For the last part, I think that there's a high probability of that. I don't know. Maybe it's just my petty gene being I'm projecting that on to Bradley Beal, but I can see Bradley Beal deciding not to use his no trade clause and just be like, hey, cool, now we got picks. I'm still going to be here. But as far as am I surprised they haven't had that conversation with Bill yet? A little bit. Because I think everybody sees the writing on the wall here. Yeah, you don't want to show your hands too much, and you don't want to risk pissing Bill off to the point to where he doesn't waive his no trade clause. But you got to think everybody kind of sees the direction this is going. You need to have a conversation because you can't do anything unless Bill is on board for it.
Every time you say it, in my head goes, Patty Jean is not mine. She's just a girl that thinks that I am the one. So I think that, first off, there's too much noise out there about the Bucks and the Bulls in particular. And there's another team that I haven't been able to track down that people think that he's open to going to. There is a very clear distinction here in that Bradley Beal has not been talked to by the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns have not had a single conversation with Bradley Beal. You know why? Because he has people that you talk to for him. That's how this works. Nobody's sitting here saying Bradley Beal's representation has not been approached. Nobody's sitting here saying that Bradley Beal's management team has not been approached. Nobody's saying that. And the reason is that's how this goes is they'll work, because I think a lot of it is Bradley's trying to compete as a professional athlete. And I think for him, it's when you have something, let me know and I'll give you a yes or no. But until then, I'm not going to get involved in all of your stuff. I'm going to try and do my job. And I honestly kind of applaud Bradley for how he's approaching this from that perspective. So I'm not necessarily surprised that they're in this kind of spot where they haven't talked to Beal yet.
All right. Well, you mentioned Billie Jean there. The Miami Heat would like to come out of this like a smooth criminal. Locked On Heat discussed the haul they could get in return. Thank you. And how it could set them up for the future. Let's take a listen to that.
First round picks. I'm kind of excited about that.
Given Miami's success with the draft lately and their ability to scout players, yeah, I'd say so. I mean, you have to have faith in this front office. Even
more importantly, David, though, I would say Middleton's expiring. Yeah. I'd almost prefer those contracts that go through next year, because if that contract comes off, if a Bruce Brown comes off, you can't really use that in a bigger trade. Now you could sign and trade it and stuff like that, but that gets very complicated. Whereas Middleton's expiring at $40 million or whatever it is next year-ish. Plus Bobby Portis is of a $12 million expiring-ish. Those are very stackable contracts. And now I've got 2 first-round picks that I can use. And if one of those picks, not to get too in the weeds here, is that 2027 pick that Phoenix just acquired, that would actually unlock 2028 and 2029 for Miami then to trade. But right now they can't really do that.
Okay, so a lot flying around there. I would encourage you to go listen to that episode latest from Locked On Heat, because they go through all the scenarios. You heard Bruce Brown's name mentioned in there. Toronto's been named as a possible. This might take 4 or 5 teams to get done. But my question is, Matt, does it seem more likely today that Miami comes out of this better prepared for the future than many had predicted they would be?
No. First off, if let's say the picks do go to Miami, when as long as Riley's there, does he want those picks? Does he want a draft? Does he know that the draft exists? No. He's just going to swap them out for more players. He's just going to try and move them because he's going to try and win now, because Riles does not have any sort of patience. There's no long-term vision until Riles is gone. They're going to try and win, and they're going to try and win now. They're going to keep star chasing. Okay, so don't get excited about those picks, even if you do get them. Second, why do you think that the Heat are getting those picks? What's the implication that the Heat are going to wind up with those picks? Because my read on it is very much from talking to people that they got these 3 picks to grease the wheels for someone else taking the money. We talked about this when we talked about this deal before, Hayes. Someone is going to be on the hook for a contract they don't want. Somebody is taking money they don't want, and they're going to need picks back in return. So I am skeptical that Miami is going to wind up in a much better spot after this deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'll fight back a little bit on Matt saying that Riley may just move the picks. I mean, you look at Khalil Ware, Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez. He's drafted players here recently, later in the first round, and so it really depends, I think, on how he views the state of the team at that time, which could sweeten the spot. But to Matt's point as well, you can't assume that they're going to get the picks, because if somebody's going to take a bad salary, you're going to have to give them something to take bad salary, and usually that means that at least some of those picks are going to those teams. I also have to fight back on something that was said in the clip. Like, I don't think acquiring first round picks from other teams frees up you to use your own picks. The Stepien rule only applies to your own picks, so they still wouldn't be able to move their own picks due to the Stepien rule. But I mean, anything that sweetens the pot for Miami is great. I question on how well Miami's going to come out on the other side of this Jimmy Butler trade unless they're willing to take back a Bradley Beal. If they have to be rerouted or a Chris Middleton or anybody to another team, then I just don't know where the Miami Heat's place is going to be after all this is said and done. I'm just not assuming that they're just going to be in a much better place. If they get the picks, cool, you have a better direction, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think the problem for Pat Riley and the Miami Heat so far is that Pat Riley's philosophy has been don't stop until you get enough in the trade.
You're killing it.
Keep going, Doug. Killing it.
We'll try. Coming up on the Locked On NBA podcast, we're going to talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. We've got lots of reporting around them and the tension between what the management of the Lakers would like to see out of the Lakers before making a deal and what their stars want. That's coming up on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Game Time. Win or lose, rain or shine, there's nothing like being there in person at a live event. Whether it's a big game, a concert, or a comedy show, Game Time makes it easier than ever to find great tickets at amazing prices. And with their new feature, Game Time Picks, you can skip the endless scrolling and get right to the best deals on incredible seats. It's all about saving you time and money while finding the perfect tickets. Plus, you can use the super deal option to score top-notch seats at unbeatable prices. Game Time also gives you the features that make buying tickets stress-free, like all-in pricing. You toggle that feature on, no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, you get a panoramic seat view so you know exactly what your view is going to look like before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your purchase. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free daily newsletter, also has a free daily podcast. But for the newsletter, go to LockedOnDaily.com, subscribe, stay up to date with local expert analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shear, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from the great Josh Lloyd. All right, let's talk about the Lakers. Jovan Buha of The Athletic had reporting yesterday on the Lakers' thinking as the trade deadline is approaching. Will they pick around the edges or go all in? Let's send it to the Kamenetsky brothers over at Locked On Lakers for the reporting and their take.
His canvassing around the league, talking to sources, stuff like that, the consensus seems to be that the Lakers are either going to make a relatively minor move, like another DFS level type acquisition, or maybe even a rung below that, or stand pat. But the idea that they're going to take a pretty big swing, use one or both of the 2 first-round picks that they have in their complete control right now seems like a long shot. However you feel about that in terms of right decision, wrong decision, if you want to see them do anything big, it's going to require them doing well on this road trip, like trending in a direction that convinces a front office that is putting out signs of being skeptical. No, really, this is worth it.
Okay, so the front office skeptical. Matt Moore with the face palm. Let me give you this from Shams Charania earlier before we taped. We taped it about around noon Eastern, so this was around 11 a.m. Eastern. Lakers stars LeBron James and Anthony Davis are, quote, growing concerned, unquote, about the team's ability to significantly upgrade the roster with their 2 tradable first-round picks ahead of the February 6th trade deadline. So now you have this tension between a front office that is skeptical and 2 stars who want to win right now. Who's going to win that tug of war, Matt?
Who's going to win the tug of war? The Clippers. That's who's going to win the tug of war. So, let's just break this down in detail. Oh no, the 40-year-old who's about to start his retirement campaign might be upset with them. You gave them the guaranteed deals, my guy, because the weather's nice and you get to produce your TV shows. Don't. You lost it. I'm sorry. You held the Cavs and the Heat to knife point for years, and we're just like, nope, the brand is strong, and I like living in LA, so you get all my guarantees. I believe in you. I want to be a Laker. And now you see what happens when you're run by a mom-and-pop organization where the organization front office is run by a former agent only because of his relation to somebody that used to play for them who passed away. That's it. Otherwise, what's really hilarious here is, oh no, you got to do well on this road trip in order for them to believe in you so they'll make a trade. Do you know what happens then? Then they're like, can't make a trade. Look how well we're playing. We don't want to break this up. Did you see Rui Hachimura? Did you see Austin Reeves? We have all-star. We are good enough to compete. No need to trade these picks. Like, guys, it's over. Pack it up. You're done. Be okay with it. Okay? LeBron, you got one title out of it. You could have gone more. You could have gone somewhere else and probably gotten 2 more, but you chose here. You're stuck with it. You got this running mate who isn't going to show up versus anybody with size and isn't going to be able to beat Jokic. That's it. It's done.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming and listening to Matt Moore's eulogy on the Los Angeles Lakers. But I listen, the Lakers, I said this on yesterday's show, I think it was, the Lakers have to sit there and take their medicine and be a normal organization now. That just is what it is. They just have to be a normal organization. Like, I get it that the Lakers have this thought and their fans have this thought process that, but we're the Lakers. Yeah, but nobody cares right now. Teams are trying to figure out their own maneuver. Like, nobody cares anymore that you're the Lakers. Nobody cares anymore that LeBron wants another star so he can go on another run. It's over with. It's done. Like, not to say that they can't put something together maybe organically. They have to wait and see what they can do. But, like, nobody's waiting to throw the Lakers a lifesaver anymore. And they're just going to have to sit there and take it just like every other franchise has done at some point in time. They're no longer going to get to sidestep being bad. It's coming. Laker fans, I know you're not used to it, but get ready to embrace it. You're about to be bad for a little while.
Was that another Michael Jackson reference there? So, but it's going to be painful, right? I mean, even that reporting there by Shams suggests that this is not going to happen quietly. Final question. So they play Boston tonight. That's a national TV game. Then they go on the road at Golden State, at Charlotte, at Philly, at Washington, at New York, and at LA. There's a lot of beatable teams there. There's nothing they can do in that stretch? I mean, if they go perfect in that stretch, there's nothing they can do to convince you that maybe they should sacrifice one or more of those first rounders to make another postseason run?
Look, I don't hate actually a lot of the underlying stuff on this team. Like, if you look at it, like, their offense really is pretty devastating. For as much as, like, I've just torn them down, I've torn them down for the nonsense that surrounds them. The team itself is pretty good, but that's just it. It's just pretty good. And there's this ongoing conversation about, like, well, the front office won't do the right thing and go all in for LeBron and AD. And yeah, no, they won't. They're going to try and hold out some level of future equity. You don't want to know why? Because there's going to be another star after this. For as much as, like, Hayes is probably right, they're going to be bad for a little while. Whether it's Giannis or Luka or somebody, there'll be another one. You don't want to know why? The weather's nice and the brand is strong.
All right. Well, maybe you think that the Lakers going all in at the deadline would be an overreaction to a great road trip. It wasn't the only overreaction that I heard on Locked On NBA's network of podcasts. I tuned in to Matt Moore and Ryan Blackburn of Locked On Nuggets after I saw the title of the podcast is Nikola Jokic Reaching Offensive Perfection. Matt, you unloaded a lot of great numbers on that podcast, which I'm sure you'll share in a moment. But this is what Ryan Blackburn had to say.
Think back to the graphic that ESPN had during the 2023 playoffs where they showed his points. He said, okay, so he's scoring like Dirk Nowitzki or whatever, like maybe it was Kareem or somebody. And then it was the rebounds, that's like Tim Duncan. And then in the assists, it was like Magic Johnson. And the three-point percentage was like Steph Curry. And you get all of these different things and all of these different elements of some of the best players that have ever played the game at such a high level. And Joker is taking every single element from each of those guys and making it his norm. I think that he is the best offensive player I've ever watched in my life, ever. And there are other guys that you can say lay claim to that. Stephen Curry is one of them. Maybe LeBron James, maybe Michael Jordan, maybe Magic Johnson. I don't think anybody is doing what he's done. ever.
Ever. Hayes. There's no doubt Nikola Jokic is working his way, probably already is in the all-time great status, but perfection and mentioning him with your hallowed MJ. Are they overreacting on Locked On Nuggets?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's understandable looking at the stats and what he's been able to put up. Jokic is a monster. Jokic is special to watch, and the way that he plays the game of basketball is fun. And for like people who enjoy the X's and O's part, the chess match of basketball, Jokic is great for that. But I talk to Matt Moore every day. We already know how Matt Moore feels about the season, and statistically he's having one of the best offensive seasons ever. But you know me, I'm a Bulls fan through and through. I got to see Michael Jordan play 5 times in person as a kid, and it changed my life. So it's going to be hard for me to say that that's not an overreaction just because of my own personal story. So,
I mean, look, we crafted this very carefully for offensively, right? The other thing I think is look, Jordan was indomitable. Like he was indomitable. You just could not beat the guy. You could beat Jokic. I think for me, it's this combination of, if you told me a guy was averaging a 30-point triple-double, I'd be like, that's incredible. If you told me that he was doing it while shooting 60% from the field or 55% from the field, I'd be like, that's nuts. If you told me he's doing it, if you told me independently a guy was averaging 30 while shooting better than 50 from the field and better than 40% from 3, I'd be like, that's one of the best scoring seasons ever. And he's doing all of that at the same time. He's, by the way, top 5 in steals. That's also a thing that's happening. He's top 5 in rebounds. He's top 5 in assists. And he has the efficiency. And all of that fails to really describe what it's like to watch him night to night right now. That Sixers team, we'll get to them in a minute. And it's not good competition. I'm not trying to argue that it was because of this game. It's that every night I see him now, and he dictates everything. He controls everything. Jordan didn't control you. He just beat you. You did whatever you wanted to, and he made the shot anyway. Joker is able to be like, all right, if you do this, I'm going to score over you. Oh, if you do this, I'm going to pass to my open teammate. Oh, if you do this, I'm going to beat you this way. Oh, you're going to leave me open. I'm going to hit a 3. I have no concept of what you do with him right now, and that's why he's not perfect. But the interesting question for me, Doug, is how close can you get, like making all the shots? I once asked Danny Green after a finals game, when they clocked the Heat, I was like, can you play better than that? And he was like, well, sure, you could always play better. And I said, how? And he was like, make all the shots? That's where I'm at with Joker right now and how he is playing.
Make all the shots, make all the steals, all the rebounds, all the assists. Yeah. It's easy. All right, we're not done with the overreactions. Coming up, we'll hear from Locked On Mavericks, and I'll ask Matt and Hayes, which team is most in danger of overreacting at the deadline or as a result of the deadline? And then we'll hear Matt's saddest team ever. We'll get Hayes' opinion on that as well on the other side. Locked On NBA. Welcome back to Locked On NBA. Thanks again for making us your first listen every day. Let's go out to Locked On Mavericks and Isaac Harris, who is looking at the Phoenix Suns, trying desperately to add a third star. And he's looking at Dallas, who has 2 stars. He's doing some basic arithmetic, and he's asking questions.
This trade does happen. Some iteration of that happens. Now you're going to see 2 teams in Phoenix and Milwaukee forming a big 3 again. Should Dallas be looking to try to do the same? Do you continue building with all the different pieces around Luka and Kyrie? Or if a third star becomes available and you have the pieces, do you go get them and say, all right, we could put these three players together and then we'll figure out the rest?
Would that be an overreaction for Dallas? Which team is in the most danger, in your opinion, of overreacting either at the deadline or as a result of this deadline? Is it a team like Dallas who would go out and get a third star as a result? Is it the Warriors tearing it all down? Is it the Bulls? Hayes, I heard you talk about this on Locked On Bulls, about the dangers of overcompensating for maybe deadlines past on your latest episode of Locked On Bulls. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the Bulls are at a risk to overcompensate just because they've lost so many trades that I think that they just want something to be like, hey, look at us, we're doing something. But I would say this, that the Warriors are the one I'm the most worried about making a brash move. They've said it. Steve Kerr said it. Draymond said it. They do not need to mortgage their future for where this team is. It'll be different if they were still at the same level they were around starting the season, or maybe if they were third, fourth, fifth in the East, and they just needed something to just help solidify that playoff run. I'm sorry, in the West, say East, to solidify that playoff run. But right now, if the Warriors were to do something, I just think that it would hurt their future so much that they just don't need. You're 11th in the Western Conference. Not to say that you can't fight your way back into the play-in, but you're nowhere close to really being able to compete and contend with these teams at the top of the West.
For me, it's Milwaukee. This conversation about trading Chris Middleton, there are guys whose contributions extend beyond the production they put on the box score. And Chris Middleton's one of those guys. He's been an anchor on that team. He's been there from the very beginning for this run of them being title contenders and Giannis's ascension and all of that. Trading him at the end of this contract to try and upgrade because you're so desperate and worried about Giannis, I think is misguided. I think you're only going to weaken kind of the bonds between Giannis and this team because it's another guy that you used to play with. I understand that eventually you got to move on. I get that. And I think that Brook Lopez maybe is a contract you should probably look, but you're kind of stuck because you don't have a backup center. But I think that it'd be an overreaction by the Bucks to move on from Chris Middleton. I would honestly think that if they were smart, they'd be looking to move Dame. That to me would be the move. You could get back so much, reconfigure the team, and be able to probably make your team overall better if they move on from Damian Lillard. But they're not going to do that. And I think that to me is the big concern.
Let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. Which team are you most worried about overreacting at the deadline? Let's go back to that Lakers-Celtics matchup tonight. The Celtics are trying to find their defending championship mojo. John Corrales of Locked On Celtics has been on the hunt for a shakeup, and he's looking at a very obvious place, how the team uses Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
I'm going to look at Jaylen Brown as a guy that if he has good energy, the Celtics are great. If he has bad energy, the Celtics are in trouble because he is critical to Boston's success. Jaylen Brown, super engaged. That means the Celtics are going to play great because he's taking on that big challenge. But against Toronto, he was non-existent, right? I think Jason is more like, yeah, whenever, like whenever you need me to play, I'll play. Yeah. Just as long as I'm there at the end, as long as I'm getting my 38 to 40 minutes, I'm happy. Yeah. I think Jalen's the one who, like, he wants to be the tone setter. He wants to be seen as, I'm setting the tone for the Celtics, because we know that Jason is the finisher. If you're not going to let me be the tone setter, then what am I really? And I think that's important to Jaylen.
All right, is Jaylen Brown's engagement, his mood, his buy-in, the thing that Joe Mazzulla needs to be paying special attention to? And what does it say about the future of the Celtics title contention that they are still seemingly dealing with this Tatum-Brown playtime dynamic, Matt?
Tick, 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 tick. Clock's running out. Okay. Jaylen Brown's too good to be Robin forever. And he was so good last year. He got paid, came in, did everything. He was the best player on the Celtics last year. Tatum was their best overall player, but in terms of most valuable and who actually had the best season, it was Jaylen Brown. That's why, and that carried through in the playoffs. That's not me to say that because he won Eastern Conference Finals MVP and Finals MVP. I picked him for both before those series because I watched the whole year of him being that for the Celtics. But you just wonder, look, he goes through this entire thing. He wins the title, wins Finals MVP. And what does he get? He gets shut out of Team USA, and he has a feud with Nike for it. Interesting, right? So I'm watching this very closely. Celtics are up for sale. Big changes are coming. I'm telling you, there's folks that are like, the Celtics are going to reel off 3 or 4 more titles. Tick, 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 tick.
I think the only thing that can save it is them winning more titles. I think that, that talk wasn't as around as much as they were going on the run that they were last year in the playoffs. And I think that that's the thing. And even at the beginning of the season, it wasn't as much talked about if you're winning. Now that they're chinks starting showing the armor, of course, people are going to wonder what's going on and who's bought in, who's not. Matt makes a great point there. Like, at some point, a player wants to try to see if they can do it on their own. And is that going to be Jaylen Brown? Is winning titles going to be something that satiates him enough for long enough to where it doesn't turn into something? That's what the Boston Celtics need to be hopeful for. But I mean, it could come if the Boston Celtics have a couple of years here where they flame out or they have disappointing seasons. Do not be surprised if it does end up to a place where somebody's going to eventually get moved.
All right, to close the show, I'd like to take you behind the curtain and into some dangerous territory. Now, to be fair, I wrote that before we got into this whole MJ thing. Our Locked On NBA group chat, that's where I'm taking you, where Matt texted Hayes and I, this Sixers team is the saddest team I've seen in person this season. So that begs a couple of questions, one for each of you. Hayes, is this the saddest team that you've seen in person or otherwise this season?
No. I've watched the Chicago Bulls.
Oh, come on. Stop that. Stop that.
Matt,
the Bulls
I'm sorry.
Are fun.
They're fun offensively, but I'm not somebody who's enamored by offense because the way I look at it, anytime they're forced to try to run half-court offense in sets, they fail. The defense sucks. The players, they're great when they're front-running and playing well, but if you look at this team and watch this team up close like I do, unless I'm just looking for something too much, the moment that they start facing some adversity, they're not talking to each other. They're not high-fiving each other. They don't barely look at each other.
I'll ask this, are they playing, do you still think they're playing for each other to a certain degree?
To a certain degree, yes.
Okay, so that's the difference here. Is the Sixers, that team I watched last night, I've seen this before, that's a team that is just like, we know the deal. It's over. We know it. We're here so we don't get fined. Like, we're just here to fill out bonus requirements and get through it. That team was just awful. And I'm not talking about like talent here. I saw the Nets and was having to Google guys like Tyrese Martin exists. That's a person that exists. But that team played with cohesion and fire and were like playing for each other and competed. And they got killed, but they were out there like with a very real force behind how they were playing. Non-existent. The locker room for the opposing team shares a wall with the Nuggets media room where the press conferences are. There were loud words exchanged in that locker room after that game. Wow. Things are rough with the Sixers right now.
So I know you qualified that with this season. What's the saddest team you've ever seen in person?
The Hawks do get this award twice. Once after Game 3 of the 2015 Eastern Conference Finals, LeBron goes and just absolutely destroys them. They're in a visiting locker room. Half of them are sick and the other half are injured. Kyle Korver's out. They had gone through this amazing season and had been so proud of their success and had this best season of their careers and were getting annihilated by LeBron, getting swept, getting toyed with. And they were so banged up. They couldn't do anything about it or have any hope. They were so beaten down. The other was again the Hawks. And this was in 2018 when they came into Denver at the end of an East Coast road trip. They got beat 138-93. And that team was just so like, please, I just want to go home. I just want a lot of teams. This happens when they wind up in Denver at the end of a road trip. They're just like, I don't care. I just want to go home.
All right, that's going to do it. We're out of time here on Locked On NBA. If you like what you heard today, you are not alone. In fact, there are 16.3 thousand subscribers to the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. Make yourself one. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen. Enjoy tonight's action. Be kind to each other. And we're going to see you right back here on Thursday's Locked On NBA. But if there's a Jimmy Butler trade, we might see you sooner than that.